Welcome to Great Game Design, the series where we look at moments or sequences from games that are just great for one reason or another, look at how and why they work and what other games can learn from them. Last time in this series we talked about how Valve achieves less with more in their tutorials, not pulling the player out of the immersive world to explicitly lecture them on mechanics. The Half Life series also does this with its use of music, or lack thereof. Video game music tends to fall into one of two camps. The game has a bespoke soundtrack composed for it full of tracks that play for a generic type of environment or scenario. For example, a track that plays for cave levels or a track that plays during boss battles. Some pivotal moments for gameplay or plot will have a specific track that plays only during that one moment, making it feel really special. Usually the developers will tell the composer what kind of scenarios are going to be in the game, and the composer will make music fitting of that circumstance. Alternatively, the game has a soundtrack full of licensed music. This is usually seen in sports games or open world titles that let you listen to some form of radio, and the music is chosen in some way to fit the game and the target audience, even if those decisions may be arbitrary. FIFA games are some of the best sellers on the market, so they usually have a variety soundtrack with something for every musical taste, as the games are played by a massive variety of people. To contrast, the Tony Hawk games had a much more distinct musical style to them, combining hip-hop, metal, punk, and other styles that feel edgy and like a skater kid would listen to. Arguably, the soundtracks of these games were designed to serve stereotypes of what skaters listened to at the time and weren't the most accurate representation, but the soundtrack works to back up the aesthetic and narrative of the title. Sometimes it's just a matter of time frame. GTA Vice City is set in Miami in the 80s, so it has a bunch of 80s music in its radio stations. But what if there was another way of doing a video game soundtrack? A secret third thing? Well, there is, and it's not all that secret, but it is underutilised. That is to just not to use music and let the player really soak in the atmosphere through visuals, gameplay and other elements of sound design. Half-Life features minimal music compared to many of its contemporaries. Early from the development of the first game, the dev team at Valve wanted to prioritise immersion and feeling like you're in the real world, not a video game environment. The level design emphasises Black Mesa as a real, if fantastical, workplace, which can be interacted with in a large variety of ways.
My God, what are you doing?
So they let you soak in the ambience of the place, using silence and the sound of enemy monsters and soldiers as the main audio tool to flesh out the environment. Of course, this isn't a hard and fast rule that they have to stick to, and they do break it to deliver extra spice into certain narrative moments. You putting on your HEV suit is accompanied by a techno beat.
Welcome to the HEV Mark IV protective system for use in hazardous environment conditions. High impact.
After everything goes wrong in a science experiment at the start of the game, you spend the next hour or so trying to reach the surface of the massive underground complex to be rescued. When you finally achieve this goal and come into contact with the military, you watch them gun down your fellow scientists up close, and you realise this isn't a rescue mission for the army, it's a cover-up. And in that moment where you realise your fight for survival just got that much more desperate, this appropriately named track plays to you gunning down the opposing force. Valve continues this trend in Half-Life 2. They're happy to let you soak in the ambient atmosphere of City 17 for most of the game's intro, but when you're on the run again, this thumping beat will start up and it almost seems to sync with the swings of your crowbar as you take out your first drone. Befitting the nature of the bustling dystopian cityscape, you can be making your way through the game in its relatively peaceful and quiet moments before you're ambushed by a SWAT team and a blast of techno-industrial music. The other mainstream gaming franchise that practiced this regularly was Dark Souls, though this has been dropped by the time of Elden Ring. Dark Souls employs this for a number of reasons. Firstly, the Souls games have always had this horror-light feel to them, being grim dead worlds full of horrific monsters which can and will brutalise you, taking away much of your progress. This feeling of terror is only amplified by being able to hear every single one of your own footsteps through these dark, dilapidated worlds, and being able to hear the breathing of the monster around the corner. Which brings us on to the second aspect of this. Actually being able to listen out for the sounds of enemies around the corner or traps is a crucial part of the game and level design at work here. These games may be cruel, but they are fair. Most of the time. And if someone is hiding, there's likely to be some giveaway to that fact, whether it be visual or audio. Lastly, the lack of music adds to the atmosphere of the world being empty and dead. Sometimes you just really feel that something is missing. The Souls series is known for having some excellent boss themes to contrast its quieter environments. But I think one of the most effective uses of music from the series comes from an environmental track in Bloodborne. You're minding your own merry little business in the streets of Yharnam, getting up to a cheeky bit of hunting. You see this fella with a sack over his shoulder and you've already faced worse than this. You wonder how tough it can be. Very tough, is the answer. But no worries, you can just respawn and try again. Except you can't. Dying to this enemy triggers a unique cutscene and has taken you to a new location, the unseen village of Yargul. Here you are trapped in an unfamiliar location, the dark rooms and halls patrolled by the very same enemy that's just wiped the floor with you. And this plays. Not only does this manage to heighten the emotion and horror of the situation, but it's still entirely in universe. This music is diegetic, as it comes from the choir of Menzies, performing a ritual to summon yet another eldritch abomination into this world. In my opinion, Half-Life's best use of music comes early within Episode 2. After navigating through a cave system, the player reaches an underground outpost held by the Resistance members Griggs and Sheckley. This section of the game is basically a defence mission as the outpost has to be defended from swarms of antlions. The Resistance has set up a security system. There are 4 tunnels, each of which has a light system next to it that will warn you when one of the tunnels is about to be swarmed. Depending on the size of the breach you're about to face, 1, 2 or 3 lights will light up. At first, only 1 tunnel at a time will be breached and the size of the swarm will be small. But the key to this encounter comes with the escalation of the threat and your dwindling resources. Each wave has more antlions swarm the outpost, requiring the player to split the use of turrets, mines and ally NPCs across defending the 4 tunnels. As this goes on, you're likely to run out of mines, health packs, ammo, and eventually even the turrets will break down. But hey, at least none of the tunnels have shown 3 lights.
3 lights! We got 3 lights!
The escalation of threat suddenly has a drastic jump. Every tunnel shows 3 lights. Some of your Vortigern allies arrive to help in the upcoming fight, but this is still going to be hell. At this point, I'd like to remind you that the previous hour of gameplay has been almost entirely diegetic. No music has played as you explore the cave systems to get here, nor as you fend off the waves of antlions. But here, as you're down to your last resources about to face off against volumes of enemies, unlike anything in the game so far, this is how the final encounter is introduced. hits every time. I first played through this sequence on the release day of the Orange Box in 2007, and 16 years later, God, I'm old. And when starting a series on some of the most memorable and impactful moments in game design, this is one of the first things that came to me, and it really works because of the contrast it has to the game's otherwise minimal presentation. Because the game consistently lacks an element of audio feedback and storytelling that many others constantly feed you, it gives them the extra bit of spice when they decide to go all out. And the difference between normal gameplay and these special moments being that much more pronounced than it is in other games. Now, this is not me saying the rest of the game is bad and saves everything it has for these big moments. The gameplay and visual elements of the games are consistently high quality, and the game's soundtrack being minimalist doesn't make it bad. Often, no music is better than bad music. The minimalist approach to music means the game has much more room to climb when it wants to hit its peak. Another way of putting it, the bare bones, atmospheric lack of music makes it all the more powerful going from this to this. Or to go back to the Souls example, going from this to this. Let's be clear, there's obviously another advantage to this style of soundtrack, and it's an economical one. When you decide that not every moment of your game needs accompanying music, then there's a lot of money that can be saved via this method, and many indie games do this. But it's not as though Valve or From Software were struggling for cash when making these games, and there's more benefits to this style of soundtrack than just saving money. Are there any other games that use this style of music to deliver on powerful moments? Let us know of any others you can think down in the comments below. Next time in this series, we'll be taking a look at Dungeons & Dragons' most controversial addition, and one subtle but important mechanic it introduced that did a lot of heavy lifting for the game's successors, and in my opinion should be copied by far more modern TTRPGs. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and or subscribed, as this would really help me make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.